5, 6 games. Why not let them play? And that's with the other end. And, it's all about creating opportunity in my mind. So I've never understood the rationale for not doing that. And I'm not sure I do today either. Not that I'm still worried about it.
Any thoughts about people wanting to go longer, improving your college? I mean, there's a dozen laws out there.
Yeah, so I just learned 2 days ago that, like, Weejan, our punt returner, he may have another year. I thought he was like 29 right now, but he may have another year because he was adjacent. He came from Iowa Western, so I'm all for that. But yeah, I mean, at some point there's got to be a limit. I don't know what that one would be. I would think 5 for 5. Once you leave high school, you got 5 years, whenever you start playing.
Kirk,
I'm not trying to be, coy, but I don't think about it, and I haven't thought about it. It's not why I got into coaching, and I said earlier, it's ironic or interesting, but it was never a goal of mine to be a head coach. I know some people, that's like what they wanted to do. I just want to be the best line coach I could be, and the fact that I am a head coach, it just happened. And probably the only place it would happen is Iowa, mainly because I don't think I would have left the NFL for another job in the collegiate level. And that was only because we lived there 9 years. My wife lived in Iowa City and loved it there. And maybe we're hoping for some stability. That didn't look too good. We're 2-18 in the first 20 games. And we're building a house and a non-signing contract. Other than that, life was great. So it's just happened. But the big thing is this: it only happens in football. I can't speak to other sports. I think coaches are a coach can be more impactful. Like if you're a basketball coach, you got 5 guys on the court. So I mean, how many guys do you need to coach 5 players? But in our sport, we got a lot of people doing the work, and the players are the most important component. So whether it's the last 26 years or my 9 years as an assistant, we've had really good players to work with. It's a good environment to work in, and I worked with great coaches in the 80s when I was an assistant. It was one of the greatest shows of my life, and it's been the same way the last 26 years. Just I work with good people.
did you ever
I saw him on the sideline late 80s. We were playing over there. It might have been the 87 game or whatever that game was. The game that got Earl Bruce fired, unfortunately. We won on the last play. I remember distinctly he was over on the sideline doing like a meet and greet with a lot of people. He had a maroon sport coat on, I'll never forget that. His classic, tie, and his glasses. And I look over and like, wow, that's what he is. Pretty awesome. And I got to sit next to Moshe Beckler at Coach Fry's retirement dinner, and it was a delightful night getting to meet him.
Regarding playoff expansion, and Tony Petitti certainly adamant he wants to go for 2-2-1 and the other the playing edge. What would that be for Iowa football? Playing things of that nature?
I'll go back. I've never had a lot of thoughts, and I waste a lot of time thinking about it because I'm not a decision maker in this whole thing. But when we went from 2 to 4, I was not in favor of that. I get the argument, but to me, it's done. In my opinion, I think it's maybe been more harmful to our game in some ways than helpful. And my attitude then was like, if we're not going to do 2, then let's just go to whatever, 16 or more the merrier. And that's a whole different discussion. But now, fast forward to what Tony's suggesting. I think it's great. I'm all for it. I think it gives more opportunity for more teams, makes the games in the second half of the season more significant. That'll be good for fan interest. Not that we are lacking fan interest, but it's going to even increase it. And during the pandemic year, we talked about doing crossover games. We had one scheduled for Michigan and got canceled, but I think it's great. Why not? I'm all for it. So, plus, it's more games on campuses, which is another business.
Kirk, what's the relationship like with you and the other coaches with Tony Petitti? Seems fairly collaborative. There's no way this plan would have gotten off the ground if you guys were adamantly against it. So
I can't speak for the other coaches, but I can just say he has really been such an impressive leader. It's been just thoroughly enjoyable to get to know him a little bit, in my role, and to work with him. He's a great listener, first and foremost. He's highly intelligent. Not that he walks around, advertising that, but you can just tell he really knows his business, and he's a great listener. And I think he's a great communicator. He'll ask very direct questions, and he actually does listen and processes. And my sense is like he's that way with a lot of people. It's not just going to two people or whatever. So I think he truly does represent what everybody in the conference collectively would hope for. And, he's very direct, doesn't waste time, which I appreciate. And so if you have a meeting with him, it's worthwhile, wasting time. Like it's a good meeting. It's interactive. It's brief. You've done what you have to get done. But I've thoroughly enjoyed my exposure with him in meetings.
Coach James
Ferentz.
Franklin is now second to you in terms of longevity in the Big Ten. What advice would you have for him to get from 12 years to 27?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I'm a big one on giving advice, but I'm only chuckling a little bit. I just think it's a sad commentary that, I've been here 20. If I can make it through the season, it'll be 27. So it's never going to happen again. In this world, I don't see anybody being able to stay or wanting to stay somewhere that long. It's just because the world's changed that way, and we have so many more critics and experts out there than we used to have. So it's made it really tough, I think, for people to coach. And it's always been true in the NFL, although that whole thing's blown up as well. And, we're not the most patient group as a society. Society of sports fans. So it's a different world. The only thing I can say is you can't worry about it. You just do your job. People are going to tell you to sit down, or you'll figure it out instead of sit down. One of the two, but it's going to happen.
But what are your impressions then of James at Penn State, and maybe seeing Devontae
He's
Ross
done a great
again?
job. There was nothing to say, but he's done a great job. You may or may not know I grew up in that part of the country. I wanted to go to Penn State. It's a matter of record. There's a reason Coach Paterno won all the games he won. They didn't offer me a scholarship, and for good reason. It wasn't very big. But they were great in the 60s, 70s. That's what I grew up watching, the Steelers in the 70s. So I've had great respect for that program, know a lot about it. And that success tradition can be carried on from it. That's probably started somewhere in the mid-60s. Coach Paterno took over from Coach Angle.
Coach, would you welcome the SEC challenge in your state and your career? Is that something fun for you?
Yes and no. I'm not trying to know all the details of it, but I know this week play one more conference game than they do, so that's a good deal for them. And that's, I'm not crazy math, but the math has to work in my mind. So, and currently we play 9 conference games, our 10th is against Iowa State. So for us to tell Iowa State we're not playing, we go play. I'm not sure I would sign up for that, quite frankly. In fact, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't. With all due respect to the SEC, but we've already got a world that we're living in, that we're comfortable in, and whatever. But if they end up going to 9 games like we do, or we go to 8 like they do, then maybe it's a discussion right now. I don't think it's even worth talking about because of that.
Do you have a preference on your
I just said a minute ago, once we went past 1-1, to me it might as well be 16. To go to 4, I don't know what purpose that served, but yeah. So I'd rather, whatever we end up coming with, the model that I think all of us are in agreement in the Big Ten is good. I think we'll be unanimous. I don't want to speak for the guys, but I fully support what the commissioner has put forward. And we'll see what happens.
What's the best thing about coaching quarterbacks? What's something you've learned over the years coaching that position?
Quarterbacks? They won't be coaching the quarterbacks. I yell at them every time they exchange. The only thing I can tell you about quarterbacks that it makes me unique. Everywhere I've ever been, it's always the center's fault when there's a quarterback center exchange. And we actually do have center quarterback exchanges when it's shotgun every play. But I always tell our quarterbacks, if there's the balls on the ground, you're at fault, not the center. That's the way it is. So give it the center, get it straight. That's your job.
Coach Ferentz, with a year under Tim Lester's belt, how do you see improvements in quarterback comfortability, timing, and overall offensive prowess as it comes into this season?
Ironically, none of our top 3 quarterbacks were here last fall, so they're all going through the same thing. But for the overall group, for the overall offense, everybody It's a lot more fluid now because it was all new a year ago. I said earlier, I've never in my career been involved in the West Coast offense. Certainly knew about it in the NFL. It's a very different offense in terms of communication. It's very wordy, a lot of verbiage. And I've always been in systems where it's as concise as possible. So that was an exchange, but it was a bigger exchange for me because I have a bigger knowledge base. Our players took to it real easily, but everything's a lot more fluid now than it was certainly a year ago. And quarterbacks are doing just fine with it.
Where do you feel like cornerback competition at this point? Corner, not corner.
Oh, corner?
Corner.
Yes.
Corner. Where do you feel like the competition is at in terms of depth and starting?
Eager to see, really anxious to see. I think, first thing, the two guys that played the most, TJ and Deshaun, both took big steps in the spring. They've played, but they were surviving. And I don't mean it maybe in those terms, but, they're capable of doing better, hopefully down the road. And that's part of the growth process. And really saw them start to take those strides and have some of the confidence that the guy has this spring. So I think they both improved, and they're really good, respected guys. And I've got a lot of love for what Jalen Watson does. I think he saw him do things on special teams that are really hard to do. I'm thinking about one particular punt. He was blocking their gunner right in front of our bench, and he did a really nice job. And that's really hard to do. I think about Dallas Clark blocking as our center on the kick return team 25 years ago. When you see guys do some things on special teams, you can easily see that carrying over what they're going to do in their roles. And so he'll be in the middle of it. And then we brought Shaheed in. I think he'll be in the competition. And so I described it as the big podium. I think we've got a lot of positions right now. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. And that's a great thing about having the month of August. We've got a month to evaluate and see where guys are at, because it'll look different than in April. And, I think it wouldn't shock me even in September. We'll see more of that as we go. Excuse me.
Kirk, you started pretty impressive.
Almost perfect. Not quite. And the one was like, well, that actually, both of them was Northern Illinois. Ran back a block kick, LeVar did, I think it was. And Coach said nines are special teams there, right? And then the Michigan State game, they probably had like 490 yards, like we had 120. Ran back a kick, and Casper ran one of those screens, perimeter screens where you can't have to block anybody. And so we were good at that, not blocking guys. And he caught the ball and scored. And so it was really kind of a flip win. The win number 3 was like a legitimate win.
So you should have started 0-20.
Could have, close.
Could anybody in today's environment
I don't think so. Tony Dungy had a quote or a tweet somewhere. I think it was this past season, maybe it was the last one, because the NFL firing system season. I know Chuck Noll history pretty well. He got off to an auspicious beginning of his career. Tom Landry, a lot of coaches did back in the day, and those guys wouldn't have survived. I'm not sure Coach K would have survived in today's world, right? So it just, God, there should be a lesson learned, but there's not going to be, because we're all sort of.
Do you think coaches change the way they may do things because they know they don't have to be one way that maybe you and other coaches did?
Yeah, like if I was just starting right now, I'd probably be looking at the world a little bit differently than I did back then. Like two things. Number one, I never had to be a head coach, so it wasn't like, believe me, I wanted us to be successful. I wanted to be successful, but like you do in anything you do, but like if it didn't work out, it was not going to end my life. I was perfectly happy being a position coach. But if that's what your total ambition is, then you'd probably make you do some stuff that maybe. So at least at that point, I was confident enough not to get. I wasn't going to start doing stupid stuff just to try to get to the next one. I wasn't in the mood to do that.
Kirk, you saw the Egyptians defense the past couple of years at Ohio State. Now that he's at Penn State, what makes that system difficult to go up against, and what do you think he can do with what Penn State has done in terms of talent?
Yeah, I mean, they've obviously been pretty good defense, regardless. Like, they've really, again, I'll go back to when I was a kid, or fast forward. They typically have really good players and they play well. So, the only thing I'd say, I've got tremendous respect for Coach Knowles. I thought that was a great hire. not that I'm a judge or evaluator, but when he went to Oklahoma State, you know, Ryan went to Oklahoma State and plucked him out of there. To me, it seemed like a really smart hire, and then, you know, watching them work the way they did, you know, they're really good on defense. It's a tough scheme, a good scheme. They've had good players, but those guys play hard. They're really sound. They don't do anything easy, and my guess is it's Penn State will play next year too, same way. And that's coaching, regardless of what you're, you know, 3-man, 4-man, blitz a lot, don't blitz a lot. They don't give you easy stuff. And it's, you got good players that play hard and they're sound, which I'm assuming that's what you see next year.
Talking a little bit more.
Another never-ending portal question, but I guess it's impacted you guys some, but some schools a lot during the bowl season. And I heard Jake Dickert, of course, talking about that this week because he's in Washington State. His team had really been wiped out. They've been to bowl games a few times the last few years. And I asked him, what about the portal? And he said he thought he would sort of like it to be wait till January.
Yeah.
Because it seems having that early portal just really wreaks havoc in the bowl season. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's really complex, and we went back and forth with our league meetings in May. What we came up with was a second window period, and basically our concept was like pick 6 weeks, roughly April to midday, and every school could pick 2 weeks they wanted out of there, so you could be fluid with your. The one big takeaway I had coming out of that meeting, it's different than the NFL, because in the NFL everybody's got the same calendar. In college, we have a lot of conference schools that have their own quarters, tries, whatever they call them. So their academic calendar is way different than ours. So I grew a new appreciation for the challenges they have versus us. And then you got the other teams that are still playing the first week, second week of January. Presents challenges too, but I think my takeaway is there's no perfect answer. So that's where people figure it out that there's no perfect answer.
In the Big Ten, what makes for quarterback talent that maybe different from other ones? Considering weather and all that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think, you know, football's fun. And, I mean, just think about the West Coast teams in our league. They still got to do this Midwest, which back in the 80s, obviously, you know, they should play the Rose Bowl back and forth, Soldier Field, and California. Try to even clean out a little bit. But, yeah, it's part of football. You play in the NFL, that's a lot of guys want to do. You may be in Green Bay on Christmas. So, no, I don't think it really varies. Everybody's got different ways of going about it offensively. It's you fitting in the system, and then, you know, if the coaches are going to make the system as well. Make it go. We've played ball sizes and changes. Drew Tate was not tall, but he's a gunslinger. You know, then we had Nate Chandler right before him. That was looked like a defensive end, 6'7", 255, 260. And the Brad Banks before that was a very different player. So yeah, you take what you got and try to work out.
I think you see like freshmen these days that were ready to be starters on the Big Ten than they were say 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah, except usually we're seeing them across the field because they're not coming to our place. You know, it's just the first guy I think of was Andrew Luck. I remember seeing him on film and saying, we're getting ready for Arizona. Who's this guy? 2009, I think, or 8, 9, I think it was. But anyway, it's Andrew Luck. I didn't know who Andrew Luck was at that point. But he's a young guy that like, whoa, this guy, you know, Texas, California, kind of for heaven. You know, they got the 7-on-7s and all that. That's starting to spread out too. But still, football's not 7-on-7. It's still about, you know, can you operate with the team and play as a quarterback and lead the team. It's what It's off the field. I mean, it's just, it's so simple. It's sad commentary. The NFL experience the same thing. They got coaches, you know, on tape showing us what's going on. I mean, why do we have to do that? It's just like even right now, we're talking about trying to, you know, pay high school kids or find ways to loopholes in the NIL. Like, why do we have to do that? Can't we just agree these are fair rules and let's play? And it's still obvious what he does have, it's just, but you can't ask, my fear is you can't ask an official on the field. They already have a hard job, now you're asking them to do stuff that's really subjective. So it's just, I just would like to think we could all be adults and say, let's just, and if you're getting your ass beat, you know, instead of having guys fake injuries, how about catching up? How about I've said what
Kirk, talking a little bit more.
Oh, I'll get you started. So I'll give you a 2-hour dissertation, a couple of them, and I cut it to way less of this stuff. That is not subjective. Like we all know watching if a guy's trying to get somebody offsides or if they're shifting their alignment. But you know, when you talk about sudden, some of the verbiage that we used is not good. I think well picked and well selected. So again, on the official, we've confused them. I always ask the officials before they go in, how do you guys interpret this? Because if you're going to stem and switch your position, it's got to be so. But you're not trying to, you're moving laterally, you're not trying to, you know, get somebody, just like a center, you know, kind of doing that with the ball, trying to get the defense to jump. Those aren't hard calls to make. I don't think we've made it work because of our use of verbiage. I hope we can all clean up the story because it's just, you hate to have a game decided by something that was cloudy and unclear.
Kirk, talking a little bit more about.
They should have an English teacher when they wrote it down. They should have, because it just, you know, somebody dropped the ball.
Talk a little bit more about Mark. I know, like you said, you haven't seen him play in person yet, but you mentioned him just being like a really good guy and getting to see how he interacts with his teammates. Do you have any examples that stick out to you right now about what you've seen from him?
Yeah, I mean, they don't stick out because he's not, that's what he's not about. I've been around a lot of good players that think about Ronnie Harmon. Nobody was more chattery than Ronnie. Nobody drew more attention than Ronnie. Like, you know, I'm going back almost 40 years. Okay, back before guys had wraparound shades and, you know, all the chains and scooters. He had it all, and he was always chirping, always talking on the field. But we've never, I don't know if I've seen a better, tougher competitor than Ronnie Harmon during my time in Iowa, either phase. So my point is, like, everybody's got different personalities, and Ronnie played hurt. He talked about mentally tough point. That's good. Great competitor. And then other guys are really quiet. But, you know, everybody's got different personalities, how they do things and the way they play. Dallas Clark's certainly different than Bob Sanders when you talk about two dynamic players. And that Mark is just everything about him. It's just like there's nothing, it's not just, he seems very confident, just a self-assured guy. I think he's earned that. He's worked hard for it. He's done the hard work. That's, I mean, it's academically what he's done football-wise. Haven't got to see him, you know, really throw it and break the huddle. I've seen him do some testing and stuff in the strength program this summer that's extremely impressive. And the numbers that he puts up are, you know, awfully impressive, you know, compared to his peers. So, like, that doesn't happen by accident. He's worked hard. He's really, I'll be surprised if he just, you know, transition and play football.
Something he mentioned was he wanted to come in and have to earn guys' respect, like not just come in and assume he's the leader. So has it been kind of a gradual taking of leadership? Did it all happen at once? What did that look like?
Yeah, I think if you try to force it, you're trying to force it, and that's not the best way. I mean, you just got to be yourself and let the process. It's kind of like a team. You got to let a team grow. And, you know, we all want to know what's going to happen this year. We'll find out. But yeah, it's part of a process. And I think Mark realized, let's come in here and do what you do. Knowing that you're hurt and you can't do all the stuff other guys are doing, which adds to the challenge. So I think that's a hurdle you really had to face. And he just did it really admirably. And now we sit here, you know, I've had meetings with our leadership group during the summer. And, it's just clear when you're around all of the other guys, how they look at him and how they listen when he talks. It's not because he told them to. He's, you know, guys feel it. The players know. Kids know. Like, you know, guys are reasonable kids. Kids know. They know faster than anybody. He gets sniff test, and our players know who he is and what he is.
Coach, you
Players played in those Dakota schools. They've been so bad.
good to me so far. Unfortunately, we got beat by one of them and then almost beat by the other. But I've long had respect for those programs. You know, South Dakota State's had a phenomenal program. We played them. You know, you start learning about their history, and North Dakota State same way. So it doesn't mean they're going to play the Big Ten really well, but boy, I think the way they go about it and do things is really impressive. And I can only speak to the guys that have come to us. And two from South Dakota State this past year with certainly Mark and Bryce. And both of them are just like, you know, they're all about their business. They're just really impressive young guys.
It seems like wide receiver has been moving in the right direction. Who are some of the guys that you feel like have been growing and kind of out?
You know, it's kind of interesting. I've talked about the line. You know, a year ago, I felt like, you know, we finally were getting there. And maybe it would start coming together, and it's almost a mirror image with the receivers. The difference is, like with the line, you got 5 starters, and really the candidates last year, this time we're maybe 7. Whereas with receivers, you know, you got 3 on the field, but you'll play 6, 7, 8 in a game. And I think pretty much everybody in the group right now, for the most part, not totally, but for the most part, could end up being. That's one of the positions I was referring to. Like, you know, I don't know who our starters will be in September, but there's a handful of guys I can see doing it, and not just doing it by default, but actually doing it because they're really playing well. And you know, I saw, you know, when I open up my little iPad and go to Google something, they got those little headlines. I saw something about a disappointing transfer, you know, guy we had. I'm like, what the hell's that? So I looked at it, you know, hit the thing, and they're talking about Gil. I'm like, disappointing? Like, seriously? I can't tell you who the guy that wrote it was. It was none of you guys. But anyway, not somebody that knew our program. But anyway, like, Jacob's a disappointment. Like, that's what we're looking for. The guy's awesome. He's an awesome guy. He's unselfish, great worker, great leader. Think about the Minnesota game where he blocked 2 guys on that touchdown run Caleb made. Like, you know, those things count too. It's not all catches. So, yeah, I really like our group. Really like the group right now. And I'm anxious to see a lot of things this August. That position is really going to be interesting.
Left tackle, another one of those positions, how that's going to shake out.
Yeah, certainly.
And the decision to bring in Bryce out of the portal, you believe he can be a left tackle for you guys?
We were interested in trying to help ourselves there, but we weren't just going to go out and like take a wild shot, if you will. And so we did our homework research on him. He's got a great story. And then, you know, then you hope you're right, think you're right, hope you're right, all that stuff. He shows up in June, and he's older, he's mature, he's got a great work ethic. He looks like a Big Ten player, and but we haven't seen him in pads blocking guys yet, so we'll find out. But I think he's going to make the group better. I really do, and I think he's, you know, another guy. I think the guys we brought in have all like transitioned and they've come to our team. You know, they've really, like, they're acting like they belong, which is what you hope for.
Coach Ferentz, Oregon brings speed, tempo, and explosive offensive firepower into Kenneck. How do you prepare your team to control the game in front of a home crowd where pace is the expectation?
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge. You know, I'm not an expert on Oregon football, but Oregon football I've seen over the last, you know, decade, a lot of good athletes, a lot of good players, a lot of guys going to the NFL. So, you know, to your point, like the first thing maybe we could do is control the ball. I'm sure it's going to be part of the game plan, try to keep their guys off the field, because I know they're fast, and I don't know who the quarterback's going to be, but I'm sure it'll be good. Just had a guy drafted pretty high who's pretty good, and I've seen him on film. So, you know, it is what it is, but I mean, we're going to play a lot of good teams in the league, and they're all challenges, and, you know, it'll be a challenge for us.
Coach,
I was going to say, what are you guys going to do? Something there?
early in your career, you were at Pitt,
Yeah.
1980.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of the best teams I ever saw. I thought they'd have beat Georgia the next year. They got it that year. You know, is that as good a team as you were around and coached?
That team was so freakishly good. And we coached them down to number 2. They were number 1 team that we coached them. Lost at Florida State. Turned it over 4 times. They had a couple. If you watch back in those days, we just close line. They didn't have end zone. If you watch a close line, which I've done of that film, you can dig it up. It's a slaughter. Like it's crushed Florida State. They hit us on screen passes. They knew what they were doing. They hit us probably about as a wizard. Screen passes, a couple of deep balls over substitute court, and then we turned it over.
South Carolina, that's a good South Carolina.
George Rogers, Scott was the tight end. And you got Marino, and then Chircano. At that time, was probably a better college quarterback than Daniel was. But obviously, he played in the NFL too. So we had both those guys. Chircano was our starting safety. Dan got hurt, so he went on to play quarterback. Flynn comes in as a true freshman, plays safety, played in the NFL. I mean, it was NFLers everywhere. Named Russ Grant, Mark May, Jimbo Covert, Bill Neal. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, it was unbelievable. And good guys, great guys.
Coach, up on the big stage, you were talking about how change is the constant of college football. Last year, I asked you about, so you had made a comment about Lincoln Riley, USC, and the defense. Last year, the inaugural season for USC, the big conference. What did you see different last year in the defense compared to the year before when you were playing?
Well, I'm not judging other teams, but they made a concerted effort to change things a little bit. Hired a new coordinator, brought Matt Ensign, and it's just you get what you emphasize in football typically. I'm not saying they weren't emphasizing it, but I think now we've got a system that they clearly believe in, and just like we're going through a transition with our offense, and they're doing that. My guess is we'll see them take another positive step this year, which is ultimately going to help them be a better football team.
Coach Ferentz. Your son, Brian, no respect for him. That's what you thought. How can you do that? Let's say
how they're going to do, or how he's going to do? I'm just asking these what I've got the highest of respect for Matt. I think he's a great hire. You may not know this, but Pat Hill was a guy I worked with. I worked with Pat 4 years in the NFL. And Pat's dream was always to go back to Fresno. He worked there with Coach Sweeney. Loved it there. Pat's an LA guy, so loved it there. I remember we went back there, actually, back to California as well. It's Fresno. He explained to me just they got a great phone. And that's kind of my education is Fresno. Followed this career, they did a great job. And so it's a great program that way. They got a great tradition. And Matt's a great guy. It sounds like they really put a good staff together. Brian enjoys the people he works with and really enjoys the players. They've been great to him. I'm happy to see him get a really fresh start. And I'm a Fresno fan. And we don't. There's no conflicts there, so I can cheer my ass off for those guys.
Well, they do the Z Valley and you're American Farmers, so
Yeah, Pat told me about the whole thing. So it's. And Pat is still there. I talked to him. I was out getting a walk. It was 12 degrees in Iowa. Like a dumbass, I'm out walking. And he's playing golf. He goes, Kurt, this is unbelievable. He goes, hey, can you wait a second? Puts his phone down, takes a shot. Shit. And then he picks his phone back up. I said, what, a bad shot, Pat? But, so anyway, Pat's a great guy.
Coach Ferentz.
Almost ready.
Yes, Ferentz, Ethan Hurd with Hawkeye Media.
Beautiful.
Your birthday's coming up, obviously, so what are you going to do to celebrate that day?
Practice. Love it.
Practice.
And be with my closest friends. Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
Absolutely.
Better be some ice cream and cake too. Hopefully somewhere in that day. Squeeze it in there. All right. We're all worn out. Ready to go home? Awesome.